And then from there, I want to have something as well too. I forgot where I was going with that. I'm going to actually have to start this video over. What up, guys? So we have a pool day for you today, the start of Terrence's off season. I'm going to tell you more about it right after you do the YouTube thing. Like, subscribe, get down in that comment section and get rowdy. Talk about politics, maybe religion. I don't know. Just get in there and get wild. Don't do either of that. I'm just kidding. Because if you do and you go back and forth for like 100 different things, back and forth, cussing at each other, I'll just delete the whole thing. And then no one can see all of your thoughts and feelings. I've already gotten off track. This off season has just begun. But anyway, so for anybody that doesn't know, we've had a couple of videos up. Terrence just got done with the 2021 Mr. Olympia. Second place, obviously not what we were going for, but part of what we were going for was his physique looking the best it's ever looked, and that was by far the feedback we got from everyone, including the judges, even clearly improved from the Arnold. And so people say, well, what do we do next? And we do the same thing we've been doing, trying to make Terrence's physique more and more perfect. He has not really had to cut weight hard to make weight, especially for this level of conditioning that he had to bring in. So realistically, we have 6 or 7 pounds we can still put on, and we're going to put it on in all the right places. So a little bit more size to everything upper body, still a little bit more size on the hamstrings and the calves. And today we are doing a pull day. So we've actually already gone through 2 days of our split, the new split, kind of just figuring shit out. But this is like the start of the split. So today is a pull day. So again, pull day, we're going to have mostly back stuff. I believe we have 4 back movements. We're going to have a couple different than what we've had previously. We have 2 bicep movements, a rear delt movement. We got some abs in there as well too. But anyway, because it's the start of the split, we're getting over stuff new, I'm going to kind of talk through the exercise selection a little bit. And you'll see we're going to, if you've watched some before and watching now, we've rotated a couple movements out. Sometimes that's for a very specific reason, and sometimes it's just for variety. Lots of times, even if a movement feels great, if we've run it for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, then lots of times we'll just rotate to something different for a little while and run that into the ground. So anyway, off-season starts. We're trying to obviously have the goal in mind of a full off-season, which Terrence hasn't had in a long time. And you guys are going to hear it here first. We already have it. We have the vision. We have it, clarity of what we want to do. He's going to get on stage at 2022 Mr. Olympia and just freak people out. The goal is to be undeniable, and that's what we're going to be focusing on every single session of this entire off-season. We've got some cool shit as well, too, aside from just the straightforward stuff. A couple other little things, finer details we're trying to really bring and have basically next level this go around. So here we go, guys. Pool day. Enjoy. Alright guys, so I just want to go over relatively briefly why we're doing the single arm cable pull down with this setup. I always say, you look at all this mess of shit just coming in, like why does he have this bench, why does he have this cable, why does he have all this crap? He's just overcomplicating stuff. Well really I have 3 goals that I want to accomplish with this single arm pull down, and all of this just is kind of how it got put together. So hopefully as we go through this you'll see why I chose all this exact stuff. But you can make adjustments if you don't have this exact half bench, the exact cable, everything's not exact. Focus on why I'm trying to do it, and then you can put the pieces together yourself. So the 3 things I'm trying to do here, probably in order of importance, is 1 is alignment. I want something that can move comfortably at my side. 2, I want something that sets the end range of motion right about here. So someone will say, you got a pull down machine right here. Why wouldn't I just do pull downs here? Well, when I sit back here, basically this is pulling me straight overhead. And that's more than most people really need for their lats, can kind of just jam some stuff up. So I want to end here. Someone else will say, well, why won't you just lean back? Well, then I've got to manage all this shit the whole time. You got a heavy enough weight, you have to manage all your torso stuff. So again, I want something that has good alignment. I want something that has a good end range of motion, the direction the cable is actually pulling. And I want something with just basically a little bit of bracing and a little bit of feedback to help keep my body nice and still. So 1, whatever you've got for a cable setup, just go like this. So this is a pretty decent test. Externally rotate your arm, raise it up till you feel resistance, and basically set your body up so in the position that your arm and the cable basically is at the end point of where your arm is pulling. So you can see when I'm sitting down in here, that's how I kind of figured out that's the height. This is how far back or forward the bench is. If I scooted more forward, I'd be jammed up here. If I scooted way back, it's going to turn more into a row. So that's one thing. Then from there, I have the cable actually set up right in the middle of the bench, meaning I don't actually have it set up so it's offset, so it pulls right at my side. I actually want it coming just a little across my midline. So again, because it's a cable, it allows me to pull comfortably at the side, so that lets me get a near fully shortened lat. But coming across my body a little bit as well too, it actually lets that lat lengthen a little bit further. So 1, that's why I have the bench set up back as far as I do. For this range of motion deal, I have the cable set right in the center of the bench, so again, it allows me to pull comfortably at the side, fully shorten, fully contract that lat while still getting a little bit of a stretch. And lastly, the bench gives me a little bit of bracing and a little bit of feedback. Again, if it was purely, when something's really for bracing, you can push in the exact opposite direction the cable is pulling or whatever you're using. So the cable pulling this way, I really like if I had a pad I could push this direction into. So this is a little bit of that, accomplishing a little bit so I can still push into it, but more than anything, it's just for feedback. So it keeps my body nice and still, make sure shit isn't moving. If you don't have this, you guys have probably seen, I've done this before with my hand on an incline bench. So I could have an incline bench, I could be sitting on the incline bench and lock a hand in place here. It does almost the same thing, but I'd rather have less joints and less stuff in between and have my body right on this. So basically I have some feedback of is stuff staying still. And someone's gonna see my gorillas here. So I don't know if you guys have this exact same setup, but if I didn't have the monkeys here, the whole bench would tip over. So those are my helper monkeys. I'm saying monkeys, hopefully you guys can see there's a monkey face on here. It's a monkey. So you guys are like, those are kettlebells, dumb, it's not a monkey. They're monkey-shaped kettlebells. Get off my back. So anyway, that is why we have this set up the way that we do. And obviously, depending on what you got, you guys own gym, you can kind of finagle some stuff and make your own sweet setup. I doubt you're gonna have monkeys, but make do with whatever you've got best you can. right, guys, so next we have 2 row variations. If I'd rather have more variations of something that's a back movement, I prefer to have more row stuff and less pull down stuff. I just think pull down stuff works best for lats. You can of course do different pull down variations more for upper back, but my preference is 1 pull down, do it really well for lats, and then do some other stuff. Row variations can be a little bit of both lat and upper back stuff. So not going to go into too much detail for both of them. The reason I use the chest support if I have it is because you get to a certain point, and again, not even for me, but for people bigger and stronger than me, where for how much weight you can actually row, you don't want your lower back and your hips to be the limiting factor. So using a chest pad allows you to make sure that, the limiting factor is what your upper back can actually do, and not your hips and not your lower back. So nothing wrong with bent over row variations, but at some point in time, I just think they're not great at everything being trained. Meaning, again, with the chest support, you can do more for upper back. And if you want to train your hips and erectors, do a deadlift variation, because most people can deadlift way more than they can do bent over rows with. So chest support on both, just to make sure that the upper back is the thing fatiguing. The simple thing is having that elbow out, so it doesn't have to be all the way up at 90, like you'll see we're dipped down here somewhere, but not having your elbow tucked right into your side allows it to pull back further. The more you can move your upper arm back in general, the more you can move your shoulder blades as well too. So here, I'm focused on a little bit of wider grip, focusing on my elbow drive, how far back I can drive my elbows, and most importantly, focusing on my shoulder blades. How far can I protract them? How far can I retract them? And then going here, another chest supported row. The big thing is this is more lat biasing. So I like this third because technically I'm getting a little bit of everything. I'm not keeping the upper back as far as traps and stuff that move shoulder blades out of it all. I'm just trying to keep more focus on lats. And for lats, I think it makes sense to always have a pull down, because you're really focusing on overloading the lengthened position of the lats, and the row, you're focusing on really overloading more of that shortened position. And this isn't the right term, but just from a meathead standpoint, which I am first and foremost, it makes sense. This kind of ties stuff in. I like the fact that I've already basically trained the lats to their near full contractile range already, maybe not overload that shortened position. I've waxed my upper back, and now I'm doing a little bit of both here. But again, I'm focusing mainly on, as the finish here, the big difference is I'm kind of focusing on trying to wrap my elbows around my side. And some of your lat fibers run more this way, some of them run more this way. People will really debate how much can you bias them. I don't care, because at the end of the day, I'm going to do both variations anyway. So I'm really focusing on wrapping around the back of my body to finish, and that's the big difference, as opposed to how far can I drive back my elbows, pull my shoulder blades together. I'm focused on how much can I kind of wrap my arms around my side. And really, obviously with the weight pulling this way, they're not actually wrapping around at all. I'm just really focusing on finishing and mainly them driving into the side. Good hard lat contraction, and not how far back can I drive the elbows. And as a bonus, I always think if you have like something like the Prime, for lat biasing row stuff, something that gets lighter at the top or heavier at the bottom is really ideal. Nothing that ruins it if you can't. Obviously, you can still get big back and big lats without that, but that's the other reason I do this one as well too. Not as big of a deal in my opinion for the T-bar to have it dropping off too much lighter at the top, although that does a little bit. This one, I think it makes a big difference to really overload the lats here and allow it to drop off a little bit, just basically as moment arms get longer to the top, and in general that means tougher for the lats. So 2 rows, and then we're on next to some low back extensions and rear delt variations. All right, guys, so next 2 movements going on. Superset just for time purposes. Obviously, you just want to do things where we're not wasting time with 2 completely different body parts. So doing a reverse pec deck for rear delts, superset with low back extension. So if you've been watching our training for a while, nothing new here. Basically, between rear delt stuff, we alternate between reverse pec deck and cables. And I basically both have a great purpose if you set them up right. They're overloaded, they're heaviest where you're strongest, and you can set up to where they're lighter where you're basically weaker. And the only thing I would say is listen to your shoulder joint. There's a lot of people now talking about, obviously, if this high elbow position gives you issues. One, I always say on here, just lean your hips back, which is the same thing as moving into this plane, a little bit of a high to low plane, or use cables and drop down more in this position. And low back extensions, Previously, we always alternate low back extensions, sometimes do some bent over T-bar rows. I just like to put these in a place where I don't want any more upper back involved and just isolating erectors. And this can be a good movement too for people that don't want all the recovery that comes with RDLs. So there's times when I like deadlift variations, RDLs, or rack deadlift variations if I want more kind of mid-upper traps. But again, obviously that's a lot to recover from as far as the actual load, and that much load, and that many muscle groups involved. And particularly 2 days from now, we have our leg day. So doing something like a low back extension can be a great way to still get some thickness for those erectors without having all, again, that tax that comes with a big movement like RDLs. So supersetting these two, and then from there, moving on to some curl variations to finish up. All right, guys, so moving on from back stuff. So obviously trained the entire back, finished with some erectors, did some rear delts. That's just the one movement for rear delts. Trains it pretty much to their full contractile range, so don't need a whole lot extra on that. And again, within our program this time, delts are probably one of the deprioritized body parts, just how they looked on Terrence for this last time on stage, at least for this first go. So moving on to biceps, you guys have been following my stuff for a little bit. For your new preacher curl variations are always my favorite, just because one, going single arm, they line up great. Two, using the pad properly, they take basically everything else out of it. I don't want something else to be a limiting factor when I'm doing it. Like I don't want my shoulders to fatigue first, or if I'm doing a standing bar with curls or whatever, my back to fatigue. And also I like to limit cheating. If your upper arm's moving, something other than your biceps is doing the majority of work. So single arm preachers here. And a little variation just because I have this piece. I've been overloading the top just a little bit, just because as we do the other preacher curl variation, overloading more the middle. But that's something we'll mess around with, and not necessarily a big deal if you don't have the prime stuff. And then from there moved into an incline curl to finish. So again, if there's something I pretty much always have in bicep workouts, whether you have your own arm day, bicep day, or on a pull day, it will always be some sort of preacher curl variations. The big meat potatoes, some hammer curl variation, and then some incline curl variation. I love the incline curl variations because the other thing because your bicep crosses over the shoulder joint, you need to have that arm just a little bit back behind your body to fully stretch the bicep. So variations of that in there as well too. And you'll see that last one we superset with a mat crunch. Terrence is doing one with the cable. All you're really gonna have a difference with a mat crunch if you're using body weight of the cable is it's gonna overload at a different point in the range of motion. Both can be great options, but that mat, that pad, I've said about that a million times. My favorite piece of ab equipment, it's $20. Get one on Amazon, search ab mat. I don't sell them, but maybe someday I will, and I'll charge $50 for them because they have my logo on it. But until that day, go on Amazon, $20. And again, a great way to train your abs to their full contractile range. which again, one exercise done properly is pretty much all you need for that. So that is that. That is our pool day, start to finish. A little bit of an explanation for why we're doing what we're doing. And again, we have biceps on today. We have a separate arm day as well too, where we also do some more direct work for biceps earlier in the workout. And so that we're getting a little bit more frequency on arms compared to everything else, because that's still one of our top priorities working this off season. So hope you guys enjoy. Like I said in the beginning, comments down below. Give me some feedback, questions, concerns, feelings, whatever. Leave them down there. Until the next one, peace.